Namaste, and let's do a little prayer and just one line of a chant. And normally we do not do a song or a chant because it's a very short session, but I'm picking this for a reason, and I think you'll like it. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Ji, beloved Guru Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, our dear friend and guide Kriyananda Ji, we humbly bow before you all. Give us the wisdom and strength to see your hand in every situation of our lives. May our hearts always feel gratitude for every experience of our life till we merge in thee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome again, friends. I'll speak just briefly, then do this little chant, and then try to complete my talk. As you know, this evening, I've picked from Swami Kriyananda Ji's beautiful book, Secrets of Health and Healing from Emotional Healing. And this is a very interesting reading on the subject of bitterness. Of course, it's a negative emotion. Let's see what Kriyananda Ji has to say about it. This is day 14. The secret of overcoming bitterness is not allowing yourself to feel that you deserve more from life than you are getting. For life will always mete out to you exactly what you earn from it. Now, that seems like a sutra, very to the point, there's much over there to, you might say, excavate, but Swamiji does not explain much. And it's like, it is actually a little bit like Patanjali. I'm reminded of one sutra of his, that if you're not in bliss, then he says it is like, almost to say it's your problem. He says you have to introspect. You were made from bliss. You ought to be in bliss. And if you're not in bliss, then you have made a mistake at some distant time. And when you correct that, when you've learned your lesson, bliss will be once again yours. And of course, Patanjali is the father of yoga. This is from the Yoga Sutras. And you read that little sutra and it seems a bit too sharp and straight. But we need that lesson sometimes. Here we are talking about, I'll let a friend over here, that we are talking about bitterness, for example, that, and I want to give you some examples to make this, kind of a little bit more real. I was recently telling somebody the story of the Maharashtrian saint Chokha Mela. Maybe you've heard of him. Chokha Mela was a little boy. He was born in a family of, cattle, people who tended cattle. And one day he would hear this temple bell all the time. And he asked his father, what is this place? Let's go and explore. And his father said, oh, no, we are not allowed to go there. This is the temple. The priests pray over there. We are outcasts. We are from a lower caste and we cannot enter those places. But Chokha Mela, this little boy, was drawn to that sound. So one day when his father was not there and he heard the temple bells, well, he did what a little boy would do. He ran in that direction, went straight to the idol of the god in that temple. This is near Pandharpur. And just started shedding tears of deep love, longing. Those old samskars, perhaps, of loving God were surging in his heart. And he was grasping the idol and just maybe even was in ecstasy. And in that moment, the priest saw what this child had done. He had entered and in their language, he had defiled the temple. And can you imagine how skewed or how off can the human mind in a group setting be, that a temple is a place for worshiping God, loving God? But it's so strange. Human intelligence does not come by age, does not come by just acquiring qualifications of one kind or another. Yogananda ji said when he went to the West to teach people how to meditate, they said, oh, you are an Eastern teacher, and these teachings are for the Eastern body. And Master said the body is the same everywhere. The nervous system, the feelings, the soul is the same everywhere. But it was not easy to convince some people. And it is very interesting that such things come up every now and then in this world of duality. Coming back to that story, they immediately dragged Chokhamela out, tied him to a post outside the compound of the temple, and were wondering what to do before the head priest came, because now they had to purify, cleanse the whole temple and sanctify it once again. Well, the priest came and he said, "Why is this boy tied over here?" And when they told him what had happened, he slapped Chokhamela in a very strong way. They say that his entire cheek was swollen and his lip was cut by that one slap. And he said, "Well, we'll deal with him later, but let's go and see how we can clean the temple first." Well, they went inside only a few more steps to discover that the idol now, and to this day, has a swollen left cheek and a cut on its lip. And of course, instantly they recognized what had happened. Now, the first part of the story is so heart wrenching. Here's a little boy, he's full of devotion, the one thing necessary to find God. He approaches God and he's dragged away from him by men of God, supposedly. And you say, my goodness, why does God allow for such a thing? But you know what, a great revival happened after that story, that the priests realized, much like people who had crucified Christ. Even last month, somebody was asking me, if Christ was God, why did he allow for such a thing to happen? He must have had so much power. And we start comparing the saints, that this saint was not hurt by his enemies. Why was Christ hurt? And so on and so forth. Well, God cannot be put in a box. Many times things that happen seem very heart-wrenching. They cause us to actually lose all sense of, you might say, rationality. Swami Kriyanandaji said, when he was expelled from his guru's ashram, all he was trying to do was share the teachings, expand the outreach that the guru had asked him to do. And it led to a misunderstanding, and without any thought or something, he was thrown out. And Padre Pio, another great saint, how easy is it to find saints? Not so easy in this world. It requires incarnations of spiritual evolution to finally, Master said, reach God. And we find these saints. And Padre Pio was another great saint of the previous century. Well, he was persecuted by his own church. There were supporters in that church, but many just couldn't stand him. They thought he was a false teacher and such. And anyway, when one time the representative of the Pope came and he wanted to meet Padre Pio, and that meeting didn't go as the person had thought, and he totally wrote a wrong report about him, updating the Pope about Padre Pio as an insane person, as a person who has hurt himself for sympathy and what not. And I remember that in the movie they show this scene, but you can also read it in the book about his life. That when that letter was sent to him, that the Pope is extremely disappointed in your behavior and such, for a moment, Padre Pio is very disheartened and sad, and he just grabs his head and he just doesn't know what to do. And all the other monks are quite taken aback, because he was their spiritual leader. And why does such a, you might say, thing have to happen to good people? Here's a saint finally we have, and why such a behavior? But then here's the wisdom of the saint also. He says, actually, it's not the fault of Father Gemelli, who was the person who had written that wrong report. He said, it's not his mistake, it's Satan. He knows how to confuse wise minds. He knows how to do that. Now, the point is, if, let's say, some circumstance has hurt us, maybe it's been an accident, somebody's house burns down, they lose a limb, tragic events happen just, when we are not at all expecting them, or somebody disappoints us. Swami Kriyanandaji said, a very close one, betrays you, is acting as it happened in Padre Pio's case for decades. They are just not on your side. They are trying their utmost to destroy you, maybe. And Swami says, isn't it enough that such a challenging thing is happening to you? Why get bitter about it? Especially once we are on the spiritual path. You see, in both the places, Chokhamila was not so bitter. He was in God. Padre Pio, for a moment, he was caught by that. Then he says, no, 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 I know what's happening. Swami Kriyanandaji himself said, he said, why should I get hurt? It's enough that those who I loved so much have so grossly misunderstood me. And he said, I will not allow this bitterness to enter my heart. He said, I continue to very consciously pray for them. I love them. Think of Christ. Here he was on the cross. Finally, an avatar comes down to help us. And as they say, we bite the very fingers that feed us. Well, there was a potential, you might say theoretically, for him to get bitter or get disappointed. But of course, Master said that didn't happen. He said, actually, on the other hand, Christ's greatest sermon was given from the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, when we are thinking of such, you might say, heroic examples and saintly responses, how can you and I overcome, you might say, our day-to-day setbacks, or like I explained, some situations that happen in our life? Well, first of all, Swami Kriyanandaji said, when something which has disappointed you has happened, he said, in that moment, you see, your feelings have been deeply hurt. And he says, that is actually certainly not the best. And he says, it is actually that time you should not make any judgment. It's enough to know something not good has happened. Like when Swami was thrown out, he was shocked. He was so sad. And Anand Mohima wrote him a letter and she said, please take this as your Guru's grace. Kriyanandaji said, grace? He said, that was the last thing. You think of Kripa as something very sweet, nice, loving, beneficial and uplifting. And Swami said, I couldn't think of it as grace. But as the years went by, and Swami faced more than that challenge in life, Swami said, I learned that when something like that happens, the first thing he would do is keep judgment aside. He said, I'll come back to this later. I cannot make sense of it. I must learn to accept it. Remember that teaching by Paramhansa Yogananda ji? Circumstances are always neutral. Now you say, how can that be? They are positive or negative. Master said, actually, they are positive or negative depending on the attitude of your mind. That calls for us to keep a joyful, positive attitude all the time, because we know this is a world of duality. That's a spiritual teaching. We know the greater the light, the stronger is the opposition of darkness. Light ultimately overcomes it, but it is not without a fight, you might say, in time and space. And so it is that whatever happens to us in life, Swami says, first, keep that judgment aside about it, learn to accept it. Then he said, you may be bitter towards a person, a situation, maybe you're bitter towards God. Swami says some saints have, as you're moving towards God, you're like, God, why? Why are you doing this? And Swami says, don't feel bad about that response. You're only, it says, it's naturally come up. And he said, you'll see, don't persevere in it, but he said, you'll see that the sooner you can turn from that bitterness to God, at least you're thinking of God. And he says, then hold on to God. And you realize that actually God is not a bitter God. He's not a vengeful God. There's a reason why the karma has hit me, if it is your karma. And then you start making sense of it. And once you make sense of it, it's like an exam that we are not trying to face. We don't want to face, but we've faced it. We've developed our strength. We've developed our lessons. We vowed never to repeat that. We don't want to face that once again. And comes a lot of freedom, comes a lot of joy, comes gratitude, Swami Kriyanandaji said. So again, as Anand Mohima in the moment said to him, oh, this is Guru Kripa, this is Guru's grace, think of it that way. Swami said it took him some years, but he came to that same understanding and he said, I've been grateful. So we'll pick this theme up a little bit more with regard to, you might say, situations in the coming few weeks, whenever I get the next opportunity. But till that time, let's meditate on these words. As I prepared for this class, I thought about it. I said, this is interesting. We carry these hurts on many levels in our hearts. But if we can learn that it's temporary, in the end, I want to overcome it. And like, just to repeat those points, Swami said, don't make judgment about the person or situation. Raise your energy. You cannot meet Satan, Padre Pio said, on the level at which he has created the problem. You'll keep fighting over there. He said, raise your energy, raise your consciousness, raise the level of joy. Once your energy is high, then Swami says you start getting the larger picture and you realize that you are slowly getting free from that which was leading to despair and bitterness and grief and sorrow, confusion, all those things. And when you come out of it, your heart is full of gratitude. And just to close, Chokha Mela, Padre Pio, Swami Kriyananda, Christ, Yogananda ji, these great saints. And Kriyananda ji said, all people who are well-meaning, they are tested for themselves and for setting an example for others that, oh, if he could overcome this, if she could overcome this, perhaps I too can find some inner strength and heal myself from what normally causes bitterness in a world of duality. Lord, I am thine, be thou mine. Swami says, when you're hurt, people, circumstances, you feel alone, he says you surrender all the time, but in those moments, Swami says, God will always be with you. He is always with you. Remind yourself through this chant. Lord, I am thine, I am thine, I am thine. Lord, I am thine, I am thine. Be thou mine, oh, be thou mine, be thou mine, oh, be thou mine. I am thine, I am thine. Om Guru.